And we're here at the TIA Livedesk at Capital Ideas 2026. I'm joined now by Beth Carroll of Prosperio. Beth, how you doing today? How you enjoying the show so far?
I'm loving it so far. It's really good.
Oh yeah, well, I got to ask you, what's been your favorite part so far? I know we're kind of midway through.
Yeah, it's really
but-
only the first full day.
Right, exactly.
I think I really enjoyed the truck stop event last night.
That's
That was neat. Going to the music museum. You know, that was kind of a neat, different thing to do. So I really like that. But
they had a theremin there, the thing you control with just electrical waves. I swear I was playing with that thing for 10 minutes.
that's
I felt
like
like a
the
kid
Star
again.
Trek music.
Exactly.
Yes,
I was making
yes.
spooky UFO sounds and everything
Yeah,
like that. It was a
yeah.
total hoot. I was really enjoying it. So, well, glad to have you here. I'd love to talk with you about Prosperio, kind of what you guys are up to, how you're helping brokers in the industry as a whole. Give us a rundown, kind of what you guys are working on and how you assist brokers.
Well, for those who don't know, Prosperio has been around the transportation and logistics industry coming up on 20 years now. So my first conference for the TIA was in 2009. I actually had my first transportation and logistics customer in 2007. So it's going to be really close to 20 years soon. And so what we do is compensation design. So incentive compensation design specifically, but we can get into salary bands and stuff like that if we need to. So as you know, brokers, whether they're customer sales or carrier sales, are typically paid heavily using incentive compensation, so commissions and things like that. We help companies figure out how to structure that so that it makes the most economic sense for the company, as well as providing adequate reward and motivation for the employees. And some people will say, well, that sounds really simple. Like, is it just 6% or 8%, you're deciding what the commission rate is? And there are some brokers that do that. They just do very simplistic commission rates, and it's good to keep things simple. But if that's all you're doing, then you're really missing the boat, because you need to give them goals. You need to give them things that they can strive toward. I have a client right now that uses ramp goals, but they only use them as a punishment. So it's like if they're not hitting their ramp goals, then they can get fired. And I said, well, how about if we make some reward when they hit their ramp goals? And it's ideas like that seem obvious, that a lot of companies really miss. That it's like you have to give people at a basic level, they need to have a minimum standard of performance, a target standard of performance, and an excellent level of performance. And something needs to materially change in their compensation when they hit those levels.
So that carrot versus stick setup is very interesting. I've never really heard of one using only the stick.
Only the stick.
That's very interesting. Is that common?
They're surprised it's not working all that well.
Yeah, I was going to say, as someone who used to do sales myself, I really like the carrot a lot more than the stick.
Yeah, the carrot's a lot better than the stick.
Quite a bit, yeah.
But you have to be careful, because then hopefully the industry is about to turn. It's been, 3.5 years now of freight recession, but you have to be really careful, because those of us that remember 2022, I was getting calls all the time because the companies were like, oh my God, we're paying way too much money for people who are really just riding the rate increases. They're not doing more volume, they're not getting more loads, they're not deepening the relationship with the customers. They're just making more money because they're getting a percentage of the GP. And that's not beneficial to the company for a lot of reasons, right? Because they're not being able to reap the rewards from it. And what was happening is that people were making enough money just riding the rate increases that they were actually letting their relationships with their customers deteriorate. And so when we came out of it, they didn't have the relationships with the customers that they needed to. Either the customers perceived that they were maybe being taken advantage of, or they just didn't get paid enough attention to because they didn't need to, so that it positioned them poorly at the end of it. So there really is more of an art to this in terms of getting the right balance and not overpaying or underpaying. You want to kind of be balanced, be market competitive, and make sure you're driving the right behaviors.
So I'd love to dig in just for a few minutes about kind of how you've seen it shift. Obviously, like you mentioned, from 2022, and even before then. I was curious, though, you just mentioned something. How have you seen in the last couple of years people sort of incentivize that relationship building? Because that's honestly one of the more important things about being a broker. It's not just treating a carrier as what have you. It's actually building those real relationships, because that's how you maintain.
Well, and the other thing is to understand this industry. When you say the word broker, what do you actually mean, right? Because every company defines that differently. It could be the customer salesperson, it could be an account manager, it could be carrier sales. So when you talk about relationships, you need to think about both a customer and a carrier relationship. And then, of course, there's brokers that are cradle to grave, that literally do everything, right, from the beginning, from selling to the customer all the way through to tracking and tracing the load. There are brokers that will call cradle to grave, taking a load from operations entry point to the end. That doesn't include the sale. So you have to be really clear in terms of your language. But talking about things that have changed is when I first started with this industry in 2007, 2009, the role of account manager was really non-existent. You had either customer sales, carrier sales, or you had a cradle to grave role. You didn't have a true account manager role. They started by using customer service, like by doing people who would do order entry, scheduling, that kind of stuff. And I've seen in the last 5 years or so the real growth of a more sophisticated account management role that is somebody that can do QBRs, that can speak at a sophisticated level with the customer, that's not just dealing with the traffic manager, but they can actually talk up with the C-suite. And so that's more like a strategic account manager, national account manager, right? Every other industry has these things, didn't exist in brokerage. And now, for the last 5 years or so, a lot of my work has been around how do we compensate these account managers, because they're not just customer service. Just paying them 1% of the GP on the loads that they're dealing with isn't going to work. They are a much more sophisticated role. They need to have a higher base salary, and they need to have pretty sophisticated KPIs that you're measuring them against, because their job is to deepen the relationship with the customers. So that's one side. And then on the carrier side, you can get into all kinds of things about like repeat carrier usage and how many loads are you booking on your core carriers and that kind of stuff, to really get the carrier reps to focus on building their relationship with the carriers and making sure that those relationships are going to be resilient through good and bad economic times.
How do some of your, especially maybe longtime customers, respond when you say we need to evolve the way we are compensating these new account managers? Because again, like, what is this role we have
Right,
here?
what is it? For the most part, they're very receptive to it. I mean, one of the good things about the work that I do is people don't ever leave their compensation plans alone. They're constantly messing with them, and so, which keeps me employed.
Nice.
And sometimes they'll come back to me like a year or two later and they'll say, they kind of sheepishly, they'll say, oh, we changed the compensation plan or we adapted this. And I'm like, you're supposed to, because what I do is I don't deliver so much the product as the compensation plan, like a fait accompli, but more education. Right, education about how you design a good incentive compensation plan and how you can build your tool set so that when different economic times happen, you can adapt your model to you. And so I'm actually really pleased when they come back and they say they've changed it, especially if they've stuck with the principles that I taught them, that is like, okay, that's what I really wanted you to get from the engagement, was not a static design, because it's only going to live for a couple of years anyway before it has to be changed. But what I want them to get is the knowledge so that they can manage it themselves and tweak it themselves as they need to.
So it's not so, like you said, it's not so much a product as it is you are opening up a new relationship with these.
Yes.
Like, I guess, what is it like when a broker engages with you? Is it surprising them when it's like that? Like, they're not just getting a piece of paper from you, you are becoming a partner with them, right?
Yeah, it's a little bit hard at first because, well, I've been around the industry enough that a lot of people know me. And a lot of people have talked, and they've talked about their engagements with me. And so referrals is one of the main ways Prosperio gets business these days. And so some of that helps smooth the way, because then people will explain how the process works and that they're really getting more of an education than just the finished product. Obviously they get that, but it's beyond that. But sometimes if they have no knowledge of me whatsoever, then I have a little bit of work that I have to do to get them to understand exactly what it is they're buying. Because sometimes they'll be like, well, can't you just give me the plan design that you did for X, Y, and Z company? And I'm like, well, I don't know that that's going to work for you. It's like, if I were a tailor and you walked in and said, well, I want Harrison Ford's suit. Well, I don't know that that's going to fit you. So, I mean, you might have really liked the way it looked on him, but it might look really silly on you. So let's make something that's bespoke to what your needs are.
That's fascinating. I love that kind of bespoke sort of consultative process of so many people want to be off the shelf, and you are like very much the opposite of that. That's fantastic. I want to talk a bit about, obviously it's buzzword does not really capture, but artificial intelligence and its impact on the industry as a whole, and especially with you guys are working on with compensation design and overall compensation of brokers. What is happening in that you are seeing?
Yeah.
And then I'll ask the second question after because it's only going to ramp everything. But yeah, what is happening that you are seeing in the last couple of years as this has really exploded?
Well, I mean, and even in just the last month. I mean, I would say in the last 6
what
weeks
happened
since
in the last?
March,
Claude.
Claude got introduced in March. As Claude Co-work, and then Claude where it integrates with Excel, which really just takes everything to a new level. So we're using it to like QCR calculators and stuff like that. And at first I was concerned a little bit about it because I was like, oh, like this is going to change everything. But in the 6 weeks that I've been using it, I would say it's got about a 70% accuracy rate, which is not all that good. And it also doesn't ever do things the same way twice, which is problematic. So you have to be really cautious about that. Like I'll ask it to create a little summary in Excel, and then I asked it with a different document, but was basically the same underlying material to do a summary in Excel, and it did it differently between the two ways. And it's like, it's the same data. So you have to be careful about that and the mistakes, right? So I've asked it to like consolidate documents, and it has screwed stuff up. So I think there needs to be a cautionary approach to this, and that it feels like it's going to be able to replace everything, right? There's sort of that perception that it's going to come in and be able to replace everything. But it can do a lot of things. It can help automate repetitive, boring tasks, for sure. But I think in terms of providing deep analytical expertise, we're not there yet. So for me personally, that's what I've been experiencing. For the freight brokers that I work with, obviously they're trying to automate freight, right? They're trying to automate a lot of the track and trace and the sort of boring, repetitive tasks that they have to do. I'm hearing a lot about, like call-ins where they can automate giving loads to truckers and things like that. So I think there is going to be some disruption in the industry from it. And from a compensation perspective, my concern on this is going to be productivity is going to increase. People are going to be able to do, a lot more loads per day. Like we were originally saying, maybe you could get 8 loads a day or 12 loads a day or 15 loads a day. I think it's now getting up to 20 loads a day. I've got a client that says they're trying to get all of their brokers to hit their carrier sales roles, to be clear, their carrier sales reps to hit 100 loads a week. Okay, so that's 20 a day. And so the volume is going way up. And for all of the brokers that are on the traditional GP percentage commission plans, if they don't account for that, they're going to see their costs go right up along with it. And that creates a problem, right? Because now you're going to have to be cutting commission rates down in order to bring costs in line. And then your carrier reps are going to be mad because you're cutting their commission rate down. But it's like, carrier rep doesn't all of a sudden become 5 times the value because they're able to do 5 times the loads, right? It's the market rate is still the market rate for the job. And for the company to recoup what they're investing in this technology, they have to be seeing some return. So circling back to what I said at the beginning, that's why it's really important to have definitions about what good looks like, under what circumstances, right? So as AI comes on, so now we're defining for this one company, good is 20 loads a day, basically 100 loads a week. So that's the new definition of good, and so we have to make sure that the compensation plan is supporting that and not over or underpaying for that attainment of what their definition of good looks like.
How do I ask this question? How are you, schooling your customers into having these conversations with their carrier reps around that? Because the carrier rep says, number go up. My number must also go up.
Right.
But obviously not, right? So, you can't tell me how you with every conversation, but typically, what is that conversation like? How are you reshaping that conversation with the AI involved in that, things of that nature? Yeah.
Well, it really doesn't change the basic message, which is always you have to do something that is more complicated than a straight line commission plan, because a straight line commission plan has no mechanism to adjust it, right? The only way you can adjust it is to drop it down. That's it. But if you have something that's a slightly more complicated design, whether it be a progressive commission table or a goal-based incentive or something along those lines, then you can pre-plan when you've designed it that it's already got some adjustment mechanisms built in so that you're not overpaying or underpaying. And so just sort of planning that you've got that flexibility in advance, you've got some additional levers that you can pull besides just the commission rate, right? So for example, very simple, I'll give you a very, very simple example. If you said we paid 5% up to goal and 7% on all dollars above goal, I've now given you another lever, goal, right? What is goal? So you're still going to get, if we raise the goal, you're still going to get 5% all the way up to goal, but now you're not getting that 7% above goal until you get above goal. And goal is going to be moving. So it's not going to be a perfect adjustment. Like if the company CFO wants to say, well, I don't want to pay any more. If the market rate is, $65,000 for a carrier rep, I don't want to pay more than $65,000 for a carrier rep. In which case, then I'll say, just put them on a salary and be done with it, and don't even worry about it, right? If that's what you want to do. But if you want there to be incentive here, then we have to have something that goes above and beyond that. But you need to have a way that you don't let it run out of control, right? They will still make more money because they're going to get 5% of more business, but we're able to get it where it's not the same as if it was 7% on everything.
We're running short on time. Okay. I have a couple other questions. I have a million more questions. It's fascinating. One specific, though, I'm curious. The last thing you mentioned there, do you see a world where, in the brokerage industry, because of all these new tools that allow for much more activity, many more loads and all that, people moving to just a straight salary compensation?
For some roles, they may, right? So, and I think what my old mentor used to tell me was never lead with comp. Lead with org design first, right? Define your roles, define what it is you need them to do, and then compensate them to do those things. So I think some of these roles that are really focused on like getting carriers to adopt load board, like pulling into the automated tools to get them to buy into that, that's not really a highly incentivized role. So, because they can't control the outcome. They can encourage, right? It's almost like a channel partner in terms of trying to get sales. They're trying to push the adaptation. So that one is going to be more salary heavy than your traditional carrier sales role that's negotiating over loads, one load at a time kind of thing.
Okay.
So I think it is going to change. There are going to be some different roles that come up in the industry.
So it's really just we'll see what happens next. That's crazy. Well, as we wrap up here, Beth, anything else you want to say just before we wrap up here?
Well, I would just encourage everybody to reach out to me, my company. We're in the midst of gathering data for the Measure Up survey. So please reach out to us. We want to make sure we get all of the brokers included in that this year. It's going to be really valuable to everybody to have it. So www.prosperiogroup.com or beth.carroll@prosperiogroup.com.
I want to reiterate that there is a link on the TIA website for the Measure Up survey as well. Beth, I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for your time here at Capital Ideas 2026.